Hello and welcome to the Underhive. We are back with some more How to Command the Death Guard. In this series, we're going to take a look at every aspect of the Death Guard. So whether you're looking to get more out of your army, or you're thinking of buying a ticket to Nurgle's Carnival of Capricious Cadavers, then there's something here for you. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the HQ options. So we've already taken a look at Mortarion in the previous video. Whether or not you're bringing Mortarion, you're still almost certainly going to run a battalion besides that. So you're going to need at least 2 HQs to fill out those slots, possibly even a third if you've got the points to spare. So let's dive in and take a look at the HQs on offer and what they each bring to the table. First up, my personal favourite, the Demon Prince of the Death Guard. So the Demon Prince of the Death Guard slightly improved on the standard Demon Prince. Got a couple of additional attacks, I believe, in exchange for not having certain other abilities. So the Death Guard Demon Prince, his profile is an 8-inch move, which is actually very fast for a Death Guard character. Weapon skill and ballistic skill on a 2+, so quite consistent. Strength 7, so he's getting a good wound roll just by default against most stuff. Toughness 6, so again, they're getting a worse wound roll against him, typically speaking, outside of really heavy weapons. And then 8 wounds, so very durable. 6 attacks, so again, dishes out a good number of attacks there. And leadership 10, which isn't going to come up against much other than Chaos Knights. And a 3-up save. So sadly, no 2-up save for him there, but he's not in Disease Terminator armor like some of the others. He does have Armor of Contempt, though. He is considered a Heretic Astartes, so the bottom line is it's a 2-up pseudo save against any sort of AP, but it is a 3-up save if it's a no AP attack. So his loadout there, he can take a ranged weapon if you'd like. He can also take wings if you'd like, but you cannot do both. So if you're taking the ranged option, you can't have wings. If you're taking the wings, you can't have a ranged option. So the Plague Spewer is the ranged option. 12-inch range, heavy d6, strength 5, AP -1, damage 1. It is a plague weapon, so you can reroll ones to wound. Each time an attack's made by this weapon, the attacks automatically hit. It's the same weapon you can have on your Plague Marines or your Blight Lords. So, you know, it's common knowledge within the Codex, I'd imagine. But in case you're not familiar, it's effectively a heavy flamer. So that's that. It's a reasonable ranged option. Can be buffed up to 2 damage if you go with Mortarion's Chosen Sons. But on a single weapon, I don't think that's that worthy a use of 1 CP or of the selected Plague Company. But where the Demon Prince really shines is in melee. He is a melee powerhouse. So you've got 2 options of melee weapon. The Demonic Axe is strength +2, so up to strength 9, AP -2, and damage 3. Not a plague weapon. Same goes with the Hellforged Sword, also not a plague weapon. It is strength +1, so to strength 8, AP -3, and damage 3. So you've got the trade-off there. The axe is an additional strength, but a lower AP. The Hellforged Sword is 1 lower strength, but 1 additional AP. Personally, I like the Hellforged Sword. 3 AP is very nice. I like to take Ferric Blight as well, so he would get that. So he would be hitting at AP 4 himself and anything else nearby. So again, well, anything else nearby would be additional AP, not necessarily AP 4. But he would be AP 4 with flat 3 damage at strength 8. It makes a mess of pretty much any infantry unit in front of him, even characters, but he can also go to town on heavy vehicles as well. Again, bearing in mind, he'll be reducing their toughness by 1, so you'll get 2s to wound against pretty much all infantry, other than very elite infantry. But against monsters and things like that, you'll probably still be on a 3-up, being able to reroll ones if you use something like Cyclic Erosion as a stratagem, which effectively gives plague weapon rules to weapons that are not plague weapons. But outside of that, you're not rerolling ones. You could go with Mortarion's Anvil and give him the Warp Insect Hive, which will give him full rerolls to hit and wound, makes him that bit more threatening, but of course that does limit you to Mortarion's Anvil, which you might not have wanted to pick. He's also got the Malefic Talons, so this gives him the Blessed 7th attack. So each time the bearer fights, it makes 1 additional attack with this weapon. Strength 7, user, AP -1, damage 2. So not a bad profile, but just not as good as the Hellforged Sword and Demonic Axe, in my opinion. You can give him the Fetid Wings, which will increase his move characteristic to 10, and will give him fly, so he can ignore going over models and over terrain, as long as when you place him down, that is legal to place him there. If this model is equipped with a Hellforged Sword, it can have a Plague Spewer. If this model is not equipped with a Plague Spewer, its Hellforged Sword can be replaced with an Axe or another Malefic Talon, so you can go with a pair of those. You will still always have one, so you can only have the Spewer if you have the Sword. If this model is not equipped with a Spewer, it can be equipped with Wings. If it is, it cannot be equipped with the Plague Spewer, so you can't have both. So you can go Sword or Axe and Wings, or you can go double Talons and Wings, but you can't go Spewer and Wings. Quite straightforward stuff. So just for those point breakdowns, I'm going to use the PDF from the new release. Don't think any of this changed though. So the base model cost is 140. The Wings will cost you an additional 35. The Hellforged Sword and Demonic Axe would be 10 each either way, and the Plague Spewer is 5. So if you go in Wings with a sword, that would be 185. So a pretty pricey Warlord, but he is at that stage very mobile and a very dangerous melee threat. If you don't want the Wings, he's 150 with the sword, which is the way I run him. I think 8-inch movements enough. He has less than 10 wounds, so he does get the character protection. So you don't necessarily want to outrun the rest of your army and then allow your opponent to shoot him, because if he was with the rest of the army, he would be protected from that. So I don't personally run the Wings, but I know a lot of people do. It's a fair enough pick. So on top of that 3-up save, he does have a 5-up invuln, so even against mega high AP, he's still got some form of protection. He has Disgustingly Resilient, like everything else pretty much, so he's reducing damage by 1. He has got the Contagions of Nurgle, and he is a Lord of the Death Guard, so core units within 6 are re-rolling 1s. He is also a Psyker. He knows 1 spell, and he can cast 1 spell. He also knows Smite, and he can also deny 1 spell. So he's not the best casting option by any means. The rest of them have 2 spells and can cast 2. But for such a beat stick and general purpose character, having the additional spell and the additional deny is fantastic. I often either put the Gift of Plagues if I plan to use the Gift of Plagues with Flash Outbreak combo, or I'll give him a support spell like Miasma of Pestilence, just dishing out the -1 to whatever unit is nearby and is going to need protection from the enemy's attacks. So all in all, I think well worth it at 150 with the sword. If you do want the additional mobility, 185 is a bit of a stretch. I don't think it's worth the additional, but 35 points, I mean, it's 7 Poxwalkers. You probably have got some Poxwalkers in the list. If you're happy cutting 7 from one of the squads, you can have the Wings on him. I just don't think it's that necessary. But otherwise, a good pick. Next up, we've got Typhus, captain of the First Plague Company himself. So Typhus has a 5-inch move, which is standard pretty much for the Death Guard. 2-up weapon skill and ballistic skill. As was mentioned to me previously, he does have Blight Grenades, so he can use his ballistic skill once he gets within 6-inch. He is Strength 4, Toughness 5, 6 wounds, 6 attacks, Leadership 9, and a 2-up save with Armour of Contempt. He is also in Disease Terminator Armour, so he has got a 4-up invuln. So not the standard 5-up from Terminator Armour, it is Disease Terminator Armour, which is a 4-up. He does have Disgustingly Resilient and Contagions of Nurgle, as you'd expect. He also has Teleport Strike, being in Terminator Armour. You can strike him in from turn 2, no closer than 9 inches to your opponent. Technically, it's 9 and an infinitesimally small amount away. So it's a 9-inch charge, but you would need a more than 9-inch contagion range to affect things. A 9 would just be out. He has Host of the Destroyer Hive. In your command phase, you can select one enemy unit within 6 of this model and roll 1d6. On a 2-up, they suffer d3 mortal wounds. It's nice to have. It's a difficult rule to remember for new players. Those sorts of effects are, in my experience, I certainly struggle to keep track of them for my first few games, but once you get used to it, you get used to tracking, oh, Typhus is on the board, is he in 6? No, okay, command phase dealt with. There's not an awful lot to do in command phase outside of bringing Mortarion, so, and even then it's only one ability, so all in all, you may forget it, but it's not that big an effect to forget. But when you do get the big 3 mortal wounds on something, maybe kill an elite model or really put a character on the ropes, that can be very, very nice. He is the Master of the Dead Who Walk, of course being the host of the Destroyer Hive, and the Destroyer Hive being the pestilential zombie virus spreaders. Or one of at least. The Master of the Dead Who Walk, while a friendly Poxwalkers unit is within 6, not wholly within, just at least one of the models is within, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, add 1 to the strength characteristic of that attack. So it brings them up to strength 4, toughness 4, and then you could add putrescent vitality on top, make them strength 5, toughness 5. Suddenly they become a really hard chaff unit to remove. You actually have to dedicate some reasonable firepower to it, or charge them in melee, which is exactly what they want you to do. So yeah, it becomes very, very difficult to deal with Poxwalkers when you've got Typhus and Putrescent Vitality buffing them up. He is a Lord of the Death Guard now, which he previously wasn't in 8, so he is giving you Death Guard core reroll 1s to hit, which is very nice. Sadly, Poxwalkers are not core, but they do well enough for the new 5 points that I think you can't complain there. And then Vectors of Disease, add 3 inch to the Contagion abilities of this model. So whatever turn range it is, add 3. So he is a nice target for the Flash Outbreak as well, but the downside is you really only get in the toughness unless you've taken Shamble Rot, which in my opinion isn't one of the best Contagion effects to share. So on that ground he is, but on the back end he's not going to be sharing a great Contagion Warlord effect really. And then Herald of Nurgle. This model can be included in any Death Guard detachment without preventing other detachments from carrying a Plague Company Contagion. This model can only carry a Plague Company Contagion if it's in a Harbinger's detachment, and that of course means it has to be Shamble Rot, which is a very similar effect to the Host of Destroyer Hive effect, but it just procs at a different point in the turn. I am going to come back to that as like a wombo combo, like how many of those effects can you stack up. It isn't going to be a powerful wombo combo, but it'll be interesting to have a look at least. So that'll be coming up after the next 10 or so videos. Still got quite a lot to work through here. This model can attempt to manifest 2 psychic powers in the psychic phase and attempt to deny 1 in your opponents. It knows Smite and 2 powers from the Contagion discipline. So again, nice to have another Psyker there. You can use him either for the direct damage, striking in, or you can use him for buffing up things like Poxwalkers or maybe Death Shroud that have struck in with him. All round, a great package, and on top of that, his weapons. So, of course, he's got Blight Grenades for if he gets within 6, just your typical Strength 4, AP 0, 1 damage. But, you know, a bit of extra damage from the shooting phase is always welcome. But the real damage dealer here is his Mastercrafted Man Reaper. So, on the Cleave profile, it is Strength plus 3, so it'll be Strength 7, AP minus 3, and Damage 3. That is a Plague weapon, so it can reroll 1s to wound. Wouldn't get the benefit of Arch Contaminator from anything though, because he's not core. And it would -1 from the attacks hit roll. So he'd be hitting on 3s with the heavy profile, but that's still pretty good. And you could give him full rerolls from Mortarion if you had Mortarion nearby, because he's a character. The Scythe profile is Strength plus 1, AP minus 1, Damage 1, and you make 2 hit rolls instead of 1. So Typhus in and of himself is, and again that is a Plague weapon, both profiles. Now Typhus is actually a pretty good target for Putrescent Vitality in and of himself, because that puts his profile up to Strength 8 and Strength 6, regardless of which you pick, and it puts him up to Toughness 6. There's a lot more Strength 6 weaponry that I'm coming up against anyway, because people want to make sure they counter Toughness 5 things like Death Guard and like more elite models within other factions. So ultimately putting him up to that Toughness 6 could help an important breakpoint, but also it helps him with the strength, getting him up to his important breakpoints. But whether you decide to buff him up or whether you decide to buff the Poxwalkers up, I think Putrescent Vitality is a really good pick for Typhus, and then you can go with whatever you want for the other spell. So Typhus, yeah, fantastic pick. and he comes in at just a flat 165, which hasn't changed. I think given you're getting a real melee powerhouse that can teleport in with some great buffs, and with an additional range on the Contagion, and he can cast psychic powers, and he's giving reroll ones to core, I don't think you can sniff at that. I think he's a great package all in one for 165. You're not going to want him in every list, but he is a reasonable pick now. Certainly since 8th, when he didn't have the reroll ones previous, that was certainly one reason to not take him. But now he does. I think he's a reasonable pick. We'll come back to the other lords, like the generic lords, in a minute. But then we've got the Lord of Virulence. So again, 5-inch move, weapon skill, ballistic skill 2, as you'd expect, strength 4, toughness 5, 6 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 9, and a 2-up save. Again, he's in Disease Terminator armor, so he's got a 4-up invuln. He's got Disgust and Resilient, he's got Contagions and Nurgle, he's got Teleport Strike because he's in Terminator armor. He is a Lord of the Death Guard, so he can reroll ones to hit for your core units. And he is a Master of Destruction. While a friendly core unit is within 6 of this model, each time that model makes a ranged attack with a plague weapon, an unmodified wound roll of a 6 improves the armor penetration by 1. I'm not a massive fan of those sorts of effects. Yes, it is a buff, like it's obviously a benefit, but I can't be bothered tracking those sorts of things, so I'm not really interested in him as a model. I don't think he does a lot extra on top of that, so I don't see him as a particularly great pick. But he's not a bad pick by any means, and he is a cool looking model. He's got a twin Plague Spewer, so that's heavy 2d6 auto hits with Plague Weapon, so he can reroll ones to wound. Strength 5, AP -1, damage 1. So it is a Plague Spewer, it just has twice as many hits on average. He does also have Blight Grenades and Crack Grenades, so you could use them instead, but I don't think you'd ever really want to. I think you'd probably stick to the Plague Spewer for that. Because, well, he isn't getting his own ability, though. He isn't getting his additional AP. It's only core units that are near him. And it is only ranged attacks as well, so he isn't any good alongside a squad of 10 Plague Marines or melee either. So I don't know, I just don't think you ever run a wide squad of ranged Plague Weapons. You might have a few in there, but I just don't think you're getting that much out of that. But he also has a Plague Claw, which is strength ×2, so it'd be strength 8, AP -3, 2 damage, and it is a Plague Weapon, but it is -1 to the hit roll. So he'd be hitting on 3s there, which is still fine. Again, not a terrible pick. He comes in at 120, so he is a cheaper alternative to the likes of Typhus, but in exchange for that, you're not getting Poxwalker buffs. Poxwalker's a great unit to take. You're not getting any spell casting, and he's not as much of a threat in melee. I think for the additional 45 points, you get a lot more for Typhus, personally. He does also reduce the Blight Bombardment strategy to 2 CP rather than 3, but to be honest, I think the Blight Bombardment strategy is kind of crap, so getting it discounted isn't really that much of a benefit. Next up, we've got the Lord of Contagion. So this is budget Typhus, really. So if you're struggling to find the points to fit him in, you might want to consider a Lord of Contagion instead. But again, he suffers with some of the same drawbacks that the Lord of Virulence does, in that he's not a Psyker. So the Lord of Contagion, again, 5-inch move, 2-up weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength 4, toughness 5, 6 wounds, 5 attacks, 9 leadership, and a 2-up save. So he's automatically equipped with a Plague Reaper, but you can swap that for a Man Reaper and Orb of Desiccation. If you wanted to, you could upgrade that Man Reaper to a Reaper of Glorious Entropy as a relic, which is a Plague Reaper profile. So you can have a Plague Reaper profile and an Orb of Desiccation, but it's done by selecting the Man Reaper and then swapping that for the Reaper of Glorious Entropy relic. But either way, if you didn't want to do that, the Man Reaper is the same as you'll see on the Death Shroud. Strength +3, AP -3, and damage 2, so it puts him at strength 7. You might want a Putrescent Vitality to be able to get him up to strength 8, but you could do that with a Deadly Pathogen as well, if you want to. And given he's a single model unit, that's a lot more relevant for him than it is for like just a Death Shroud champion, where only the champion would go to strength 8 and strength 6 on the respective profiles. The scythe profile is the light attack, so oh, and as well on the heavy it is -1 to hit. Again, very common theme with that. The scythe profile is strength +1, so up to 5 unless you give him something extra to get him to 6. AP -1, damage 1, and you make double the attack rolls, so you would make 10 attacks instead of 5. Again, both of those profiles are a plague weapon, so you can reroll once to wound. He's not core though, so he wouldn't benefit from Arch Contaminator. The Plague Reaper is, to be honest, is the way I'd go with it. Either way around, I'd probably take the Relic if I was wanting the Orb. But the Plague Reaper is strength ×2, so strength 8, AP -3, flat damage 3. It is a plague weapon, and again, you -1 to the hit roll. I will mention it just because I've touched on it there. The Reaper of Glorious Entropy does not have the -1 to hit, which is why I like it as a replacement to that Man Reaper, because then you can have the Orb, you can have the Plague Reaper without the -1. It's a permanent +1 to hit in melee, which is, in my opinion, definitely worth 1 CP. As long as he can get in and do some damage. Obviously, if he does nothing all game, then it wasn't worth anything. He does have the Orb of Desiccation if you go for the Man Reaper and Orb. It's a 6-inch single-use grenade. Grenade, 3d3 blast, so if it's hitting a squad of 6 or more, you guarantee 9 hits, otherwise it's 3d3. Strength 4, AP -1, damage 2. So the idea is you use it on a horde. So, you know, something like Necrons that really like to go wide, that could be very nice. Guard, Genestealer cults, all those sorts of things do like to go wide. Not necessarily above 11, but certainly as far as 6 or more, which would get you the guaranteed 9 hits. But it is only single use. It's not guaranteed 9 hits. It's 9 hits that you would then roll. They're not auto hits. But the blast does help it get more hits quite a lot of the time. It is a plague weapon, so you can reroll your once to wound, but it's only 1 AP, so you're not guaranteed to push that many through. But it is 2 damage, so any that do get through should be killing infantry models. Abilities-wise, he has Disgustingly Resilient, Contagion to Nurgle, and Teleport Strike, as you'd expect, is in Terminator armor. He does have Vectors of Disease, so he does add 3 to the Contagion, hence budget Typhus. He has the 4-up Invuln, and he has the Lord of the Death Guard reroll 1s for your core. So again, in all other respects, besides the fact that Typhus's Mastercrafted Man Reaper deals 1 more damage on the heavy, and he's a Psyker, it's effectively the same. There's one or two other abilities for Typhus, to be fair, but might not be relevant depending on your list. Personally, again, I would still always take Typhus over him because I think Typhus does more for a point for point. But again, the Lord of Contagion is 120 flat. He would be an extra 5 if you want the Orb. And if you wanted the Orb and Reaper of Glorious Entropy, he's going to be 125 plus a CP. Not a bad pick though, and if you really like the way that sort of thing goes down, you might want one of these as well as Typhus. So it's not to say he's bad, I just don't think he's as good as Typhus, even accounting for the fact that Typhus costs more. Now next up, this guy saw a discount, the Malignant Plaguecaster. He is your go-to for a cheap HQ slot, particularly because he's a Psyker as well. So you can get some great force multiplication at a very cheap price. He has gone down to 90 points now. So the Malignant Plaguecaster has a Corrupted Staff, Blight Grenades, Crack Grenades, and a Bolt Pistol. I mean, he can be equipped with a Bolt Pistol, but it doesn't cost you anything, so I don't know why you wouldn't. He's got Disgustingly Resilient and Contagions of Nurgle, and he has his ability Pestilential Fallout. When you successfully manifest a power and the result was a 7 or more, the closest enemy unit within 12 suffers 1 mortal wound. For the damage spells, such as Smite or Curse of the Leper, they have to target the closest enemy unit. So if you are within 12 when you cast that, granted their range is 18, but if you are within 12 when you cast that and it's on a more than a 7, you get a bonus mortal wound, which is brilliant. Otherwise, you might just be throwing out some buffs, but there's an enemy unit nearby and they take a bit of damage just as a result of being nearby. Again, very nice. He can cast 2 spells, and he knows 2 from the Contagion discipline as well as Smite, so reasonably flexible and reasonably potent if you can get both spells off each turn. The profile there is as standard, really. 5 movement, 3 up weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength 4, toughness 5, 4 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 8, and a 3-up save with Armour of Contempt. So the Corrupted Staff, I don't think it's a great profile, but it's fine. Strength +3, so it's Strength 7, that's pretty nice. AP -1, not so good. And then D3 damage, which is kind of swingy. When you get the big 3, it'll feel good, but it's like if you're fighting models with 2 wounds and you hit a 1, then a 3, unless you've used Haze of Corruption, that damage isn't carrying over and you've wasted 2 damage. So I don't think I'm the only person, but I really prefer flat damage. You can make decisions on what needs to be targeting what. D3, you're at the mercy of the dice as to whether it was a good move or not. But for 90 points, I don't think you can go wrong. I think particularly if you're running Mortarion, you will have a Malignant Plaguecaster just to fill up one of the HQ slots cheaply. You might even take 2. You're perfectly entitled to do so. And if you're wanting to go wide with more mechanized forces, you want 2 or 3 Plague Bursts, you want 2 or 3 Blight Haulers, you want 2 or 3 drones. You can only have 2 drones if you've got a squad of Blight Haulers for the fast attack slot. But if you want in a good mix of those, you will limit how many points you've got. Obviously, you still need to fill out the troop slot. You almost certainly still want some Terminators of some kind in there. So as a result, you might not have the points to go for Typhus and a Demon Prince. Instead, you can go with a Plaguecaster. You're still getting all your spells off. You've just not got as much of a beat stick. But in exchange for that, you've put all of your points into the mechanized force, and so they can deal the damage that he isn't going to be. But otherwise, great value, 90 points, can't fault that. So then we've got the Chaos Lords. So the Death Guard Chaos Lord comes in at... don't think they've written... oh, there he is. Sorry, I've missed him. So he comes in at 85 points, but pretty much all of his weapons are an upgrade. So you're going to be looking between 90 and 100 points for him, depending what you do. If you leave him with his bolt pistol and chainsaw, then fine, he's 85 points. But I'd argue that you're paying 85 points for reroll ones. You can get that other ways. I would sooner go with at least the Terminator Sorcerer. But the bottom line is the Chaos Lord on his own, I just don't think he's good value. You're paying between 90 and 100 points. All he really brings to the party is reroll ones for your core units. And he's the same speed as them at least. He's 6-inch move, 2 at weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength 4, toughness 5, 5 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 9, and a 3-up save with a 4-up invuln and armor of contempt. But I just don't think he does that much. And if you're starting to upgrade him, you're then putting him above the points cost of the Malignant Plaguecaster. Although the Malignant Plaguecaster isn't giving you reroll ones for your core units, I would argue that the spells that you're going to be getting off would probably even out that difference in terms of value. So I do not recommend the Chaos Lord unless you're literally running for 85 points, and that's because that is all you've got left and you can't fit in a Plaguecaster. We've got the Chaos Lord in Terminator armor, who is 105, and then you probably will upgrade him. Whether you go for the Combi Melter or Power Fist, that's going to put him up to 110. If you want the Chain Fist, that puts him up to 115, or perhaps 120 if you're going for both. Ultimately, again, I don't see why you'd be doing this. You'd be spending between 110 and 120 for a model that pretty much only brings reroll ones to the party. I would much rather have the Lord of Contagion or Lord of Virulence for a very similar point cost. Again, if you're running him as cheap as he comes because you need a HQ slot, you would still have always had the option of the Malignant Plaguecaster, and that would have left you with some change to get a few more Poxwalkers in. So again, I can't recommend the Chaos Lord or in Terminator armor unless you're running him as cheap as possible, and it's because you just didn't have another way to spend the points. And then lastly, the Death Guard Sorcerer Lord. So he knows 2 spells, casts 2 spells, denies 1, knows 2 from Contagion and 1 from Smite. He has a 5-up invuln, not a 4-up invuln. He's got Malicious Volleys because he's a Space Marine. He has got a bolt weapon, so that could be relevant. Disgustingly resilient, Contagion to Nurgle, and Teleport Strike, as you would expect for somebody in Terminator armor. So he's coming in at Coming in at 110 plus upgrades, so probably between 115 and 130, 125, depending what you want to do with him. Again, I mean, he doesn't reroll the ones. I think I'd pretty much always rather have the Malignant Plaguecaster. The one benefit of having him is he can strike in. So if you've got some, close range damage spells, you think, well, I'll keep the buffs on a Plaguecaster or something else that's going to march up the board, but I want to strike in with a group of Death Shroud, buff them up, deal some damage on turn 2. Then maybe the Death Guard Sorcerer in Terminator Armor is what you pick. But again, I think I'd rather just try and find the extra 45 points and get Typhus. He does far better in melee, and he has all those bonus effects for things like Poxwalkers as well. So that's it for the HQ choices. A bit doom and gloom on the Chaos Lords, but other than that, the rest of them are fine picks. I personally overvalue Typhus, I'd say. So it's fair enough if you feel Lord of Contagion, Lord of Virulence are worth their points compared to Typhus. I just think that the whole package you get rolled into one is worth more than the sum of its parts. Having a model that is a beat stick and a psyker is worth more than having a psyker and a beat stick, because that model can choose to do both in a given way, in a given turn, and that makes him worth arguably slightly more than the 165 you're paying. But that's for you to determine for yourself. I still think the Demon Prince, Lord of Contagion, Typhus, and Malignant Plaguecaster are your go-to 4. If you're running Mortarion, you'll definitely have a Plaguecaster to be cheap, possibly 2. But other than that, you can fit however many of them you want in the list. It just comes down to whether you'd rather have more heavy vehicles and less quality in the HQ slot, or whether you'd rather have more quality in the HQ and one less vehicle. Personally, I'd go for more quality in the HQ and less vehicles, just because the vehicles are durable enough as they are. You don't tend to lose them unless your opponent really targets them, and if they're doing that, then they're not targeting your HQs, and you can reap the rewards, no pun intended, of the value that somebody like Typhus can bring with his beat stick scythe. Well, that's it for the HQs. If you've got any comments, please do leave them. I will always read them and get back to you. Otherwise, if you'd rather leave a like or a sub, you know how YouTube works, it helps me out. But I want to let you know that it really does mean a lot to me, so thank you so much for doing that. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching the video, and I'll see you next time in the Underhive.